LoveLore Library. Chapter 85. Li Hongyuan unhurriedly walked through the gate of the Jade Essence Palace. Along the way, he had attracted the attention of many people and made many little palace maids blush and their hearts beat faster. For this living king of hell, as long as they didn't get close to him and just watched him from a distance, it was really pleasing to the eye. This son pays his respects to Imperial Mother. Noble consort Su couldn't help but be dazzled by her son's unbelievably handsome looks. Unfortunately, it was probably because he was too good-looking that his other aspects were too horrible to look at. If he could be a little better in other aspects, or not have such a bad temper, or not be so lustful, or be able to do some proper things instead of not doing proper work, then even if he was a jinx to his wife, there wouldn't be no one to take care of her. It was a sad thing to talk about. Quickly rise. How are you on those injuries? I've troubled Imperial Mother. This son is fine now. Imperial consort Su was still in good spirits, but she had lost some weight. It was probably because she didn't have any news of him a few days ago and couldn't eat or sleep well. Knowing that he had returned to the capital safely, she was relieved and recovered some of her energy. It had only been 10 days, so his injuries naturally couldn't have healed. However, for someone who could move freely in less than 20 hours, her worries were unnecessary. How could it be fine? Imperial Mother heard from the Imperial physician. Look at you, child. If your injuries haven't healed, you should have just told your Imperial father to rest at ease and recuperate in the manner. Yet, you didn't say a single word, causing your Imperial father to be anxious all day long. The courtiers suffered, but they didn't dare to blame your Imperial father. Instead, they marked you down. Have they not put a small mark on this son's head? It's not that big of a difference. Li Hongyuan said indifferently. Imperial consort Su was also very helpless about his sloppy and careless attitude. Where did you go wrong? How did you become like this? It has nothing to do with Imperial Mother. It's this son's own fault. Li Hongyuan was absolutely obedient in front of Imperial consort Su compared to when he was at odds with Lu Qingdi and occasionally talked back. Since you know your own fault, can't you change it? It's been a long time and can't be changed. Or is it that Imperial Mother doesn't care about me anymore? Are you starting to dislike me? Li Hongyuan looked at noble consort Su with a faint expression. Imperial consort Su inexplicably saw the grievance in his eyes. Her heart softened, and her temper immediately dissipated. All right. Don't look at me like that. Do whatever you want. Your Imperial father doesn't care about you and you're already in your 20s. I can't be bothered to care about you. She still had to blame her son for being too handsome. Even a slight softness in his gaze was unbearable. It was no wonder that those women would die after being pampered by him for a few days. Even she, as his mother, could succumb to him. You came directly to this consort again. Why don't you go to your Imperial father first? He'll be jealous again. Imperial consort Su said angrily. Li Hongyuan curled his lips into a smile. Is Imperial father jealous of your son or Imperial Mother? Noble consort Su was startled by his sudden smile and became angry. She grabbed the teacup beside her and threw it at him. Your Imperial father was right. You're a vile creature. You even dare to play with your Imperial Mother. It's been too long since this consort taught you a lesson. Are you itching for a beating? Do you believe that this consort won't beat you up again today? Li Hongyuan pretended to dodge. He knew that the teacup was still far away from him. How could noble consort Su really want to hurt him? Imperial Mother, don't be angry. This son knows his mistake. Noble consort Su sneered. You know your mistake, you know your mistake. When have you not known your mistake and when have you changed? It said that there's nothing better than knowing your mistake and being able to change. What if you don't change after knowing your mistake? I'll definitely change this time. There won't be a next time. Imperial Mother, don't be angry and harm your health. Li Hongyuan hurriedly said. Noble Consort Su was startled. Her first reaction was, why was he so obedient this time? Then she inexplicably felt sad. No matter how much of a scoundrel Yuan was, as long as his mistake was related to her, he would always change immediately. As he said, he wouldn't make the same mistake a second time. She knew that he loved her dearly, but as a mother, how could she really care about her son's small mistakes? However, this child was so serious every time. If she really pointed it out, she was afraid that he wouldn't know what to do. Remember to pay respects to your imperial father first in the future. She didn't mention this matter. If I go there first, I probably won't be able to come over today. Li Hongyuan was very considerate and didn't mention it again. In the future. Let's talk about it in the future. What are you planning to do now? Noble Consort Su's entire body seemed to deflate. She was very weak. Imperial Mother, don't worry. This son doesn't plan to do anything. Noble Consort Su's expression said, I'd be a fool if I believed you. This time, Imperial Father didn't inform this son and made the decision to bestow a marriage first. If it was a beauty, it would be fine, but it just had to be an old woman with a disfigured face. Wouldn't this son be dissatisfied? It was clear that he was dissatisfied with the marriage and wanted to argue with Emperor Luqing. However, when his mouth was poisonous, it made people want to seal his mouth. What nonsense are you saying? Miss Sun is just 16 years old. How can she be an old woman in your mouth? Li Hongyuan sneered, 16 years old. It's fine that she didn't get married before the marriage, but she didn't even have an engagement. If she isn't an old woman who can't get married, then what is she? She got married before the marriage and had an engagement. How can she bestow a marriage to you? If she settled the marriage as soon as possible, Imperial Father wouldn't have to use this son as a scapegoat. Li Hongyuan didn't give in on this issue at all. This is getting more and more ridiculous. What do you mean by using you as a scapegoat? How can you talk about your Imperial Father like this? Isn't it? This son hasn't been in the capital during this time, so I don't know anything. Duke Dinghua has never been afraid of making a big deal out of it. He can't wait to make the whole Qi Yuan dynasty know about his daughter's disfigurement. Imperial Father found him annoying, so he used this son to shut his mouth. What did this son say? If he is really so kind and benevolent, why didn't he directly bring her into the harem? She can be a companion to the Empress. Aunt and niece can serve the same husband and spread a good story. Yuan, evil creature, before Imperial Consort Su could speak, Luqingdi's angry roar came from outside. His voice was so loud that it could shake the roof tiles off. Following that, something flew straight toward Li Hongyuan. As if he had eyes on the back of his head, Li Hongyuan took a step away. With a bang, the thing fell to the ground and shattered. A piece of first-class ancient jade the size of half a palm was gone just like that. Imperial Consort Su couldn't help but feel distressed. Evil creature, what did you just say? Say it again if you have the guts. Li Hongyuan immediately used his fingers to dig his ears that were hurting from the shock. He opened his mouth and wanted to repeat what he just said, but he was pulled back by Imperial Concubine Su, who quickly walked down from the main seat. She stood in front of him and stood between Li Hongyuan and Luqingdi. Li Hongyuan raised his eyebrows and retracted his arm without a trace, but at the same time, he chose to shut up. This concubine pays respect to your majesty. Why did your majesty come to this concubine's place at this time? Imperial Consort Su said with a smile. If I didn't come now, wouldn't I have missed out on this evil creature's nonsense? Yuan didn't mean it. Your Majesty, don't be angry. Imperial Consort Su comforted. Beloved consort, move aside. If we don't teach him a lesson today, we won't be able to get rid of the hatred in our heart. Your Majesty, Yuan's injury hasn't healed yet. What if the wound opens again? It's said that the injury is on the son's body, but the pain is in the mother's heart. This concubine doesn't believe that your Majesty doesn't feel distressed. This concubine has been looking forward to his return day and night. If something bad happens again, wouldn't this concubine's heart ache to death? Imperial Consort Su could still hold it in before, but now she couldn't stop crying. Yuan narrowly escaped death this time, but he was unknowingly bestowed a consort that he didn't like. He was angry in his heart, so he spoke without thinking. Your Majesty, please don't be angry with Yuan, okay? Okay, I won't be angry. Beloved consort, don't cry. When Luqingdi saw that she was crying so sadly, he suddenly lost his temper and hurriedly coaxed her. He turned to look at Li Hongyuan, who seemed to be a little stiff. Evil creature, don't you see your mother crying so sadly? Who is this all because of? Why don't you coax her? Li Hongyuan had never coaxed a crying woman before, so he really didn't know how to do it. At least a small part of his stiffness and helplessness was real, and not purely an act. Mother, don't cry. That was all he could say. Fortunately, Luqingdi didn't count on him. He was very good at coaxing women and soon made Imperial Consort Su stop crying. Your Majesty, this concubine was disrespectful. This concubine didn't want to cry, but when I thought of Yuan's near-death situation, I couldn't help it. All right. Isn't he standing here perfectly fine? Then Your Majesty, don't punish Yuan. Okay, I'll do as beloved consort says. I'll let him go this time. Imperial Consort Su smiled through her tears, but when she thought that her son was still here, she couldn't help but blush. It was really embarrassing. Li Hongyuan didn't feel anything. He was very serious about learning how his father coaxed people. Maybe it would come in handy in the future. In his previous life, he didn't see Wan cry, but who knew when she would cry in the future? If he didn't know how to coax people at all, Wan would be angry. He seemed to have heard that when a woman was sad and crying, she hoped that her man would coax her to show that he really loved her and cared about her. Then, one day in the future, Jingwan tasted the feeling of being coaxed by her husband. It really made people speechless to the extreme. It turned out that this overbearing, unreasonable, and possessive psychopath actually had an extremely low EQ 8 out of 10 times. It was Jingwan who had to coax him. There were also 2 times when he sulked by himself, and Jingwan didn't understand. What was going on? Could it be that he had a relapse again? Imperial Consort Su stopped crying. It was time to deal with Li Hongyuan. Luqingdi tried hard to suppress his anger. What do you want, you evil creature? Annul the engagement. Annul the engagement. You sure have a glib tongue. It's easy for you to say, but don't you know that a monarch's words are not joking? We personally issued the decree, but you take it back in the blink of an eye. Do you want us to have any face left? Luqingdi gritted his teeth in anger. It's not the first time you've lost face in front of your son. What's the harm in doing it again? Li Hongyuan had an expression that said he should have been used to it. You. Luqingdi raised his hand, wanting to slap him. Yuan, Imperial Consort Su's voice was a bit higher and a bit shrill, but Li Hongyuan could see the trace of pleading in her eyes. Li Hongyuan paused and moved his eyes away. You gave Aken such a Wang Fei, shouldn't you compensate Aken with something? He really did compromise. Imperial Consort Su breathed a sigh of relief. It had to be said that the anger in Luchingdi's chest also dissipated a lot. He was also afraid that this bastard would make a scene regardless of the consequences. Then what should he do in the end? Should he really punish him ruthlessly, or should he compromise and take back the decree again? This evil creature was right about one thing. Because of him, as his father, he had lost face in front of the ministers more than once. Fortunately, this evil creature would occasionally listen to his mother. But thinking of this, Luchingdi's heart was unbalanced again. He was the one who controlled the world, the one who held the power of life and death. He was also his father. Did this evil creature not have any fear? Did he not have any respect for his father? Luchingdi's suppressed anger began to rise again. What, the imperial father doesn't want to give your son any benefits? Li Hongyuan's face turned cold. If Luchingdi dared to nod, then this matter would be over. He could forget about obediently marrying an ugly and old woman. Your Majesty, Yuan is like this because he is your son. Look, who else does he care about? Imperial concubine Su knew very well why Luchingdi was so angry at this moment. She was probably anxious to persuade him, but why did her words seem to be adding fuel to the fire and setting him on fire? Sure enough, Luchingdi stared at Imperial consort Su and said coldly, he doesn't care about others, but is disobedient and unfilial to me. I'd rather not have such a son. Imperial consort Su's face immediately changed. Your Majesty, you can't say that. If my sister's spirit in heaven heard it, she would be sad. Luchingdi's face changed, and his anger dissipated in an instant. Imperial consort Su helped him calm down and said gently with a smile, if Yuan really doesn't care about you, I'm afraid you'll be even angrier. Who was the one who was angry when Yuan didn't enter the palace? Of course it's you, my beloved consort. Who else could it be? Luchingdi glared at Li Hongyuan again and snorted, it's my bad luck to have raised such a vile creature who purposely angers me. Who told me to owe such a debt? Li Hongyuan remained silent and pretended not to hear or understand. Imperial consort Su smiled good-naturedly and changed the topic. Since Yuan wants compensation, then what do you want? As long as it's not excessive, your imperial father will agree to it. Isn't that right, your Majesty? Luchingdi continued to snort. Imperial consort Su was helpless against this pair of father and son who were like natural enemies. However, she was indeed used to it. If one day they got along peacefully and the father was kind and the son was filial, she was afraid that something big would happen. Since it's imperial father who wants to compensate this son, it's naturally up to imperial father to decide. Anyway, this son has a princess consort now, so I don't lack anything. Can't you talk nicely to me? Do you have to be so sarcastic? Where did this son say something wrong? Yes, there was nothing wrong. This vile creature had taken so many good things from him. If he, the emperor, was a little extravagant, the imperial censor would immediately send a memorial to reprimand him. Therefore, this vile creature was more extravagant and enjoyed life than him. If you couldn't find the most precious thing in the world in the emperor's private storehouse, perhaps you could find it in Jin Qinhuang's private storehouse. What he lacked was a wife and son. Now that he had a wife, he had no choice but to go back and find a wife to slowly give birth to his son bastard. After talking for so long, he was still brooding over the marriage. Luchingdi also regretted it. Why did he pull this vile creature out in order to shut Duke Ding's mouth and give him a lesson? What was he thinking at that time? Could it be that his days were too comfortable and he had to make himself suffer to be happy? If he could, Luchingdi wished he could go back to the time before the imperial edict was issued and burn it. Then he fiercely punched himself to wake up so that he wouldn't make a mistake. Get out of here. You're not allowed to enter the palace before the marriage. Compensation and whatnot, wait. Ken asks to be excused. Li Hongyuan didn't have the slightest bit of hesitation and quickly left. He left too quickly, making Luqingdi unhappy again. He blew his beard and glared at him. Imperial concubine Su looked at Luqingdi with hidden bitterness. Qinxia still wanted to keep Yuan for a meal. Yuan hasn't accompanied Qinxia to eat for several months. Luqingdi glared at Imperial concubine Su. Imperial concubine Su continued to look at him with hidden bitterness. She had a posture that wouldn't move even if the seas dried up and the rocks rotted. Imperial concubine Su tilted her head and chuckled. Aunt Qi, why haven't you stopped Jin Qin Wang? Seeing Luqingdi leisurely walk to the main seat, she didn't say much. She was afraid that if she said one more word, he would fly into a rage out of humiliation. She clearly wanted to keep her son for a meal, but she had to say one thing and mean another. However, this awkwardness was indeed caused by Yuan's anger. Otherwise, how could she let him, an emperor, say good words to his son and nicely keep his son for a meal? Then he wouldn't be an emperor anymore. Li Hongyuan, who was stopped by Aunt Qi, wasn't surprised. He indeed hadn't eaten in the palace for a long time, so he agreed. Li Hongyuan had to admit that Imperial concubine Su was a good Imperial concubine. Even if he started his life from the age of 10, he couldn't deny this point. Not to mention in the inner palace, even in the entire Qi Yuan dynasty, there weren't many who treated their children as well as she did. She didn't beat him to death or flatter him to death when she treated her adopted son. He was no different from her biological son, or even better. And this difference was also genuine heartfelt. Li Hongyuan treated her as his biological mother in his previous life. He also did his best to help Li Hongming ascend the throne. In this life, there was also some sincerity in his respect for her, but most of it was gone. No matter how good she was, it couldn't erase one or two bad things. He once gave her a chance. If she gave up, he didn't mind letting bygones be bygones and taking care of her for the rest of her life. He could even spare Li Hongming's life. But she still did the same thing as in her previous life. He returned. Imperial father, have you finished dealing with the political affairs at this time? The ministers have worked hard. What he meant was that they didn't do their own things and threw them to others. I spent so much money to support them. Naturally, they have to share my burdens. Otherwise, why would I support them? He glared daggers at Li Hongyuan. In the entire Qi Yuan, this evil creature was the biggest parasite who only took benefits but didn't do anything. Li Hongyuan naturally understood Luqingdi's meaning, but he had no intention of sharing his father's burdens. Luqingdi also didn't count on him. Come here and play 2 games with me. Imperial consort Su hurriedly asked someone to fetch the chess pieces and prepare tea and snacks. Li Hongyuan sat opposite Luqingdi and habitually took the black piece. Then, he habitually gave 2 pieces to Luqingdi. Still so arrogant and conceited. Luqingdi snorted but didn't insist on not letting Li Hongyuan take the black piece. Li Hongyuan's slender fingers twirled the chess pieces between his fingers. The great color contrast made his hand look even more beautiful. There was nothing to nitpick about his skin. Luqingdi put down his chess pieces very seriously. The further back he was, the longer he took to think. In comparison, Li Hongyuan was much more undisciplined. Basically, after Luqingdi put down his chess piece, he put it down as if he didn't even think. Imperial consort Su watched quietly from the side. She also knew how to play chess, but she only knew how to play it. Prince Rui, Li Hongming, and his sister, Princess Min Xiang, came hand in hand. They knew that Li Hongyuan was in the Jade Essence Palace. They also knew that Luqingdi was also in the Jade Essence Palace. However, when they came in, they didn't expect to see the 2 of them playing chess instead of looking at each other coldly. The brother and sister looked at each other and prepared to go forward and greet each other. However, Imperial Consort Su turned around and motioned for them to be quiet. Princess Min Xiang ran happily to Imperial Consort Su. She was already a 15-year-old girl, but she still hugged Imperial Consort Su like a child. Li Hongming followed and his gaze naturally fell on the chessboard. When he saw the situation on the board, his pupils couldn't help but shrink. His gaze then fell on Li Hongyuan and became more and more complicated. He had never played chess with Li Hongyuan and had never even seen him play chess. Now, he vaguely remembered that when Li Hongyuan was a few years old, people seemed to have praised his chess skills for being extraordinary. However, he was only a few years old. Even if he was praised to the heavens, people wouldn't really pay attention to him. Later, there were gradually no related rumors and people just thought that he had faded into the crowd. But it turned out that he wasn't. When it came to chess, Lu Qingdi wasn't a top master, but he was above average. When Li Hongming played chess with him, he would lose 7 out of 10 times. Of course, because the other party was his father and emperor, Li Hongming didn't dare to go too far. According to his estimation, if he didn't deliberately let Lu Qingdi win, he should have a 50% chance of winning against him. But now, it seemed that Li Hongyuan had clearly won against his father by a large margin. Lu Qingdi placed another chess piece and Li Hongyuan followed suit. Wait a minute. Lu Qingdi picked up the chess piece and did something like retracting his move. Li Hongyuan looked up at him and didn't say anything. He just took his hand back. The spectators were a little confused. They kept glancing at Lu Qingdi. Was he really the emperor of Qi Yuan dynasty? Lu Qingdi didn't pay any attention to them. He was focused on the chessboard. After thinking and hesitating, he finally placed his chess piece. You don't want to change it? Li Hongyuan asked. Seeing how filial he was, he didn't mind giving his father another chance. Lu Qingdi hesitated again. I don't want to change it, he said uncertainly. Li Hongyuan snorted softly and placed his chess piece. A piece of Lu Qingdi's chess piece was eaten. It's not as good as just now. He saw Lu Qingdi looking up and glaring at him. What? You still want to regret? Lu Qingdi gave up. Despite Lu Qingdi's desperate struggle, he was still defeated by Li Hongyuan in the end. Lu Qingdi's eyes almost turned red. You bastard, don't you know how to let me win? Let you win. I'm not lying to you. I have always respected my father. Of course, I have to be realistic. Why don't I see you respecting me usually? Let's play again. Chapter 86. Li Hongyuan threw the chess piece back into the box. Imperial father, you should find someone similar to you to play. In Urchin's opinion, third imperial brother is a good choice. Li Hongming's smiling face was slightly distorted. What was the meaning of this? Someone who was about the same level as imperial father was said to have been defeated by him, Li Hongyuan. Even though this was the truth, it was still infuriating. Under noble consort Su's gaze, before Lu Qingdi looked up and saw his face, Li Hongming forced himself to return to normal. It is Urchin's honor to play chess with imperial father. But Aken doesn't know if imperial father has the mood now. After all, Urchin's chess skills are much worse than 6th imperial brothers. It is precisely because they are evenly matched that it is fun. Li Hongyuan stood. Clearly, no matter what Lu Qingdi chose, he didn't plan on accompanying him. Min Xiang, let's go. Accompany imperial brother to walk in the imperial garden. Princess Min Xiang, who was suddenly called, was at a loss. She unconsciously grabbed noble consort Su's clothes, her resistance obvious. Noble consort Su looked at her daughter and frowned. What is it? Min Xiang, haven't you been complaining that you haven't spoken to your 6th imperial brother in a long time? Isn't this a good time? But Princess Min Xiang purposefully pouted. But Aken wants to accompany Imperial Father now. Aken hasn't spoken to Imperial Father in a long time. Finishing, she saw that Luqingdi seemed to want to say something and immediately moved forward. Imperial Father, Aken wants to stay by Imperial Father's side now. There will be plenty of time to speak with 6th Imperial Brother in the future. Also, Princess Min Xiang purposefully slanted her eyes at Li Hongyuan and pretended to dislike him. 6th Imperial Brother isn't as important as Imperial Father. Luqingdi laughed. He seemed to be very happy that his daughter chose him and not that bastard. As expected, he was more important. Alright, just stay here. Your 6th Imperial Brother knows the way. Let him go by himself. Li Hongyuan didn't even look at Princess Min Xiang and walked out. Min Xiang, don't make Imperial Brother wait too long. Vile creature, did you not hear what Jin said? I want your sister to stay, but your sister doesn't want to go. Then Imperial Father should send someone to clean up those so-called concubines in the Imperial Garden as soon as possible. If there is another scandal of this son seducing a concubine, Imperial Father's dignity will really be swept to the ground. Luqingdi's face instantly darkened. It was definitely because he didn't do as he wished, so this evil creature deliberately brought up this troublesome matter to annoy him. But looking at his appearance, he must have been up to no good from the beginning. He deliberately came to the palace to stir up trouble. If the marriage didn't satisfy him, perhaps he would have made a scene. So he was not satisfied that he didn't make a scene just now, and now he wanted to make up for it. She wanted to tell him to come back, but she changed her mind. Min Xiang, go and follow him. Make sure he stays away from the others. Min Xiang didn't expect this to be the result. She reluctantly agreed, then slowly moved out. Min Xiang, don't let Imperial Brother wait for too long. I don't want to say the same thing a third time. Princess Min Xiang's body stiffened. She didn't dare to challenge her 6th Imperial Brother's patience. Lifting her dress, she ran forward in small steps and followed behind Li Hongyuan. Seeing this daughter who was occasionally a little spoiled in front of him following behind that evil creature obediently like a little kitten without claws, it was simply. Fine, Luqingdi didn't have any temper. He was the emperor, how could he care about these things? She brought this shame upon herself, she couldn't blame anyone else. Third son, come and play 2 rounds with Zhen. Yes, Imperial Father. He had many children, and only that one was disobedient. Suddenly, his old heart was comforted. Thus, in the process of playing chess, Li Hongming experienced the feeling of a loving father's care. He was simply overwhelmed by the favor, so he couldn't concentrate during the game and frequently made mistakes. Thus, Luqingdi's heart that was damaged by his 6th Imperial son was repaired by his 3rd Imperial son. His mood naturally improved, and he asked Li Hongming meticulously about all kinds of things. Li Hongming started to feel restless. Princess Min Xiang obediently followed behind Li Hongyuan. If Li Hongyuan didn't speak, she also pretended to be a little mute and didn't take the initiative to speak. The palace servants serving her also didn't dare to breathe too loudly, following behind Eunuch Mu like little attendants. Perhaps it was because the incident with concubine Li had taught the imperial concubines too much of a lesson. They had been trying to meet Luqingdi in the imperial garden, but when they saw this living king of hell, all of their expressions changed subconsciously. Then, they walked far away. There was no need for Luqingdi to clear the area. Li Hongyuan's clearing effect was stronger than the plague. As Li Hongyuan walked, he ruthlessly crushed the flowers. No matter how expensive they were, he crushed them into a ball in his palm. The flower juice flowed through the gaps between his fingers, drop by drop. Especially the red flower juice, it made Princess Min Xiang think of something. Her delicate little face became deathly pale, and beads of sweat even faintly appeared on her forehead. Li Hongyuan turned around. Minxiang, are you afraid of Ben Wang? No, no. Looking at Li Hongyuan's handsome face with a smile that wasn't a smile, she didn't find it pleasing to the eye at all. Instead, she felt that he was like an evil spirit and subconsciously took 2 steps back. As expected, Minxiang is afraid of Ben Wang. Li Hongyuan reached out, as if wanting to pat her head. No, don't come over. Minxiang flung Li Hongyuan's hand away. She turned and wanted to run, but for some reason, she tripped and fell to the ground. Li Hongyuan frowned and bent down to reach out. Minxiang. He seemed to want to pull her up. Go away, go away. Don't come over. Princess Minxiang curled up her body and closed her eyes, waving her hands vigorously. Li Hongyuan wasn't a good-tempered person. His face immediately turned cold and he slightly raised his hand. Eunuch Mu hurriedly went forward and put the handkerchief in his hand. As he carelessly wiped his hands, he coldly looked at Minxiang who was sitting on the ground. His gaze was gloomy. Seeing that something was about to happen, one of Princess Minxiang's personal palace maids braced herself and went forward. Prince, don't be angry. The princess is just afraid of the red juice. She doesn't mean anything else. As she spoke, she put her arm around Princess Minxiang's shoulder and softly comforted her, trying to help her up. However, she kept paying attention to Li Hongyuan's reaction, afraid that he would get angry. Perhaps Minxiang was really frightened. No matter how the palace maid comforted her, it was useless. She even showed signs of going crazy. When they first noticed that something was wrong, someone ran to report to noble consort Su. Thus, the 3 people in Jade Essence Palace naturally rushed over. What happened? Luqingdi asked with a calm face. Looking at the situation, it was obvious that Jin Qinhuang had bullied Princess Minxiang. However, Luqingdi didn't believe it and neither did noble consort Su. Their son was indeed not a good person sometimes. Even if he occasionally looked for trouble, other than those beauties that he fancied, he wouldn't take the initiative to provoke other women. Furthermore, Minxiang was his younger sister. More importantly, Li Hongyuan had never been interested in bullying the weak. He didn't even look at what kind of people he'd offended on a daily basis. Daring to talk back to Luqingdi, daring to sneer at court officials and disdainfully, daring to not be soft-hearted when dealing with his brothers. As for those noble gongzi and young masters who saw him, they were like mice that saw a cat. He wasn't that childish and senseless. On the other hand, Li Hongming looked at Li Hongyuan with suspicion and scrutiny. Princess Minxiang's palace maid hurriedly explained the whole story. Noble consort Su heard this and looked at Li Hongyuan's cold face. She was afraid that Minxiang didn't know what was good for her and made him unhappy. She hurriedly ordered the palace maids to directly carry Minxiang back to her palace. Then she explained to Li Hongyuan in detail, Yuan should know that when Minxiang was 7 years old, she fell seriously ill. After she recovered, she developed the problem of not being able to see red juice. The imperial physician said that Minxiang must have seen blood somewhere and was frightened. However, when asked, she couldn't say anything. After that, she tried to avoid seeing red juice as much as possible. Li Hongyuan paused in the action of wiping his hands. Looking at the red silk handkerchief in his hand, he frowned. Ken doesn't know. Noble consort Su saw that he still had an expressionless face, but she could feel a trace of guilt from him. This was already very rare. As the saying goes, those who don't know can't be blamed. You don't have to take it to heart. In reality, Li Hongyuan was very indifferent to everyone. Other than his mother, he could get close to her. Even Li Hongming and Princess Minxiang, who both grew up in Jade Essence Palace, couldn't make him feel much concern for them. Thus, noble consort Su wasn't surprised that he didn't know about this matter. Sixth brother doesn't know about such an important matter. Minxiang will probably be very sad if she finds out. After all, Minxiang has always liked sixth brother. Li Hongming said with a smile, this prince originally thought that sixth brother was deliberately making fun of Minxiang because she didn't listen to you just now. Li Hongyuan looked at him indifferently. Oh, so in the eyes of outsiders, this prince is such a petty person. Then, if third imperial brother has something that you are afraid of, remember to keep it well. Otherwise, this prince will use this opportunity to make fun of third imperial brother. Shut up, all of you. Lu Qingdi wasn't a hot-blooded emperor to begin with. In addition, he was old and hoped that his sons would be respectful to each other and have a happy family. Even though he knew that this was impossible, even though he knew that his sons were secretly fighting with each other because of the chair he was sitting on, he was still willing to deceive himself and others when it wasn't out in the open. Needles hidden in cotton floss would definitely make him angry. Noble consort Su also gave each of them a warning look, telling them to shut up. Mother, go and see Minxiang. This son saw that she seemed to be quite frightened. It would be better if mother was here at this time. Noble consort Su also knew that this was true, but she was also very worried. Then Yuan, wait for mother. Lunch. Mother, I can accompany you to eat at any time. As long as you don't find this son bothersome, I can come to the palace to eat with you every day. Let's forget about today for now. Minxiang is more important. Noble consort Su was still a bit hesitant. Imperial father, mother, this son suddenly remembered that there is something I need to do. This son will take his leave first. Without waiting for their response, he turned and left after bowing, as arrogant as ever. After taking a few steps, he suddenly stopped. Mother, what does Minxiang like? Noble consort Su was surprised. Was he going to prepare a gift for Minxiang as an apology or to calm her nerves? He said with a smile, she likes anything that most girls like. I understand. No matter what, it was the most troublesome to meet anything. It was rare for Li Hongyuan to be affectionate, and Lu Qingdi was quite happy. If it was directed at him, he would probably be even happier. Because of this happiness, he decided to compensate him with 30% more gifts. Li Hongming lowered his eyes, hiding all the emotions in them. Don't blame them. Even if they were raised by imperial mother, he was as jealous as the other brothers. If Li Hongyuan dared to do something, they wouldn't dare to do it. If they did something a little out of line, they would be lectured and reprimanded. However, Li Hongyuan could do a lot of disgraceful things, but at most, they would be yelled at by imperial father and imperial mother. Even the imperial censors would keep their mouths shut. On the contrary, if he showed a little love for his brothers and sisters and cared for his elders, it would make imperial father and imperial mother very happy. However, no matter how much filial piety they put in, they would at most get a smile and a, "You're so considerate." There was nothing else. This was the difference. It was a habit, so it was natural. No matter how out of line it was, it wouldn't be worse, and no matter how excellent it was, it wouldn't be better. On the contrary, if someone who was out of line suddenly did something that made people feel gratified, it would immediately make people forget his bad points. On the other hand, if someone who was excellent and perfect suddenly did something out of line, then his good points would be overturned, and people would only remember this one thing and be brooding over it. In the future, when they encountered similar things, they would immediately associate it with him, and he would never be able to wash himself as clean as he was before he was stained with dirt. As for Li Hongyuan's temperament, it was caused by many factors, such as the right time, the right place, and the right people. It was impossible for others to imitate him. Li Hongming not only suspected that Li Hongyuan was deliberately scaring Minxiang, but he also suspected that the person who caused Min Xiang to be afraid of the red juice was also him. After all, ever since Min Xiang fell seriously ill, she subconsciously became afraid and distanced herself from Li Hongyuan. Of course, this wasn't obvious at the time and almost no one noticed. When Min Xiang was young, she was very clingy and liked Li Hongyuan. She always followed behind him like a little tail. After she recovered from her illness, she seemed to be the same as before. Later on, they slowly drifted apart. In addition, after Li Hongyuan left the palace and established a residence, Li Hongyuan's temper became worse and worse. It seemed reasonable that the two completely distanced themselves from each other. However, Li Hongming felt that it was somewhat strange. However, even if he suspected it, he didn't have any evidence. After all, Min Xiang couldn't explain it herself at the time. Even if his lady mother investigated thoroughly, she couldn't find anything. Now that Min Xiang was afraid of him, what could it mean? Many people were afraid of him. Those arrogant, unruly, and insufferably arrogant princesses and princesses, none of them dared to look down on others in front of him. If Li Hongyuan knew Li Hongming's thoughts, he would probably give her 3 words: quite smart. When Princess Min Xiang was 7 years old, Li Hongyuan was 14 years old. No matter how tender that shell was, it couldn't stop him from being a mature man who had been an emperor and had experienced countless difficulties. He would only punish a little girl for no reason. Since he did so, then there must be a reason. Since she wasn't someone who was blocking his path, then he would do such a thing and spend so much effort to scheme against a little girl only because Princess Min Xiang was related to Jingwan. This was naturally related to Li Hongyuan's previous life. After all, in his current life, Jingwan and Princess Min Xiang didn't have any relationship. The person who caused Jingwan's fate, Princess Min Xiang, also had a part to play. Because in her previous life, Princess Min Xiang, with her status as a princess, stole Jingwan's fiancé, Qin Jingmin. If it wasn't for the fact that she didn't have Qin Jingmin as her fiancé, Li Ruyu wouldn't have thought that Jingwan, who was skilled in flowers and trees, could be a threat to win Sun Yilan's favor and scheme against her. In the final court examination, although Qin Jingmin didn't enter the first rank, he still placed 3rd in the 2nd rank. Although no one would remember him compared to the first rank, he was only 16 years old after all. He could be considered a young talent. Before that, Princess Min Xiang had coincidentally met Qin Jingmin once. That one meeting might not have been enough to make Princess Min Xiang fall in love with him. But in comparison, Qin Jingmin was a very suitable candidate for a husband. Princess Min Xiang had already reached the age of choosing a husband, and Princess Xiang meant that her future was cut off. Usually, any ambitious man wouldn't like Princess Xiang. Thus, the princes of the princesses weren't very satisfied with them. It wasn't easy to find a suitable one who was pleasing to the eye but didn't have any background. Thus, even though she knew that Qin Jingmin was already engaged, she still begged imperial concubine Su. Although Emperor Luqingdi valued Qin Jingmin's potential, Qin Jingmin didn't have any achievements. There were many outstanding people out there, and it didn't make a difference whether he was there or not. After finding out that Qin Jingmin wasn't married and didn't have an engagement, he naturally made the decision. In reality, before Emperor Luqingdi knew about it, imperial concubine Su had secretly put pressure on the Qin family to break off the engagement with the Luo family. If it was any other family, even if it was the most outstanding one, they might be able to accept it. After all, it was only one person's future being cut off, and it could also benefit the other brothers. But Qin Jingmin's family was different. His father was his grandfather's only son, and he was the eldest grandson. Although he had 2 younger brothers, they were both born of concubines and were still young. No one knew what would happen in the future. For him to marry a princess was definitely a heavy blow to the family. Especially his mother, who only had one son and had placed all her hopes on him. Now that all her hopes were gone, one could imagine how much hatred she felt. But her daughter-in-law was a princess. Not only could she not put on the airs of a mother-in-law, she also had to serve her like an ancestor. Her son also had to live in the princess's residence and might not see her for 10 days to half a month. Everyone thought that Qin Jingmin was a docile sheep, but in reality, there was a wolf living in his heart. After losing his favorite cousin and ruining his great future, his mother was depressed and cried all day. As the saying goes, if you don't explode in silence, you will die in silence. And Qin Jingmin happened to be the former. He became a wolf that seemed to be silent but was actually ruthless. Princess Min Xiang was dealt with very badly by him, but she didn't dare to say anything. She wasn't pregnant for several years after their marriage and was scolded as a hen that didn't lay eggs. In reality, Qin Jingmin had never consummated his marriage with her. Even at this point, she didn't say a word to imperial concubine Su. Those who knew about this matter later really had a new level of respect for Qin Jingmin. Li Hongyuan's success in the end couldn't have been less due to Qin Jingmin's efforts. Although he had Sun Yilan's ability to govern the world, he could be regarded as Li Hongyuan's right-hand man. Logically speaking, if Princess Min Xiang hadn't stirred up the situation, Jingwan would have married Qin Jingmin in the end, and her life would probably have been smooth. Li Hongyuan wouldn't have had the chance to know that there was a woman like Jingwan in the world. From this point of view, all those who pushed Jingwan to that miserable fate should be regarded as Li Hongyuan's benefactors. Unfortunately, what he saw was what Jingwan had suffered. Sorry, he couldn't see anything else. No one should try to reason with him. A few days later, on the birthday of Great Elder Princess, was the opportunity for Princess Min Xiang to meet Qin Jingmin. As for how they met, Li Hongyuan didn't know. The only safe way was to trap Princess Min Xiang in the imperial palace, and Qin Jingmin couldn't enter the imperial palace, so he completely isolated the two of them. Before the palace examination, Qin Jingmin's marriage would be settled. At that time, even if Princess Min Xiang liked Qin Jingmin, without the previous encounter and the new opponent that was hard to deal with, she could only leave it unsettled. If he let nature take its course and let Qin Jingmin still be a princess, for Li Hongyuan, it was the most satisfying way to deal with his rival in love on the premise that he couldn't kill her. However, out of some considerations, Li Hongyuan didn't want to ruin Qin Jingmin's future. He could learn from Princess Min Xiang's method of snatching people away, but he had to find someone else. Many years ago, Li Hongyuan made Princess Min Xiang unwilling to see blood, so he didn't prepare for this day so early. At that time, it was just a coincidence that he came up with this idea on the spur of the moment. He just happened to avenge Wan first. Although as the person involved, Jingwan didn't know that there was such a big enemy, it was not a bad idea to keep the rest as a backup plan. Li Hongyuan thought back to a few years ago. The method he used on Min Xiang seemed to be a little cruel. In essence, Min Xiang wasn't a bad person. It was just that she had always been pampered and spoiled. She would snatch whatever she wanted and never think about other people's wishes. This wasn't just her, it should be a common problem for all of them. At that time, Li Hongyuan was trapped in the palace and didn't know about Jingwan's situation at all. Although he knew that Jingwan would grow up peacefully in Qi and prefecture, he was still very irritable because he couldn't see her. He was often in a state of devil incarnate and always needed to find something to relieve the ruthlessness in his heart. Princess Min Xiang's cat happened to be in his hands. He was in a good mood and chose a good place, leading Min Xiang to find him alone. In front of Min Xiang, he skinned the cat alive and deliberately made it very bloody. Min Xiang's eyes were glaring red and her ears were filled with the cat's screams. This lasted for a long time. Later, he even imprisoned Min Xiang and blindfolded her. He placed the cat's corpse in her hands and removed the black cloth covering her eyes. The bloody corpse pierced directly into her brain in the most intense way. Min Xiang fainted from fright and fell seriously ill. However, when she woke up, she couldn't remember anything and was left with the problem of not being able to see red juice. And just in case, Li Hongyuan didn't let her see him from the beginning to the end. However, he always let her vaguely feel his existence. Chapter 87. Li Hongyuan left the imperial palace, but he didn't get on the carriage. He came out today to show off. Whether he needed it or not, Eunuch Mu considerately asked the guard to bring his precious horse. Sure enough, Li Hongyuan directly took the reins and patted the horse's neck. This reddish-brown precious horse had glossy hair without any impurities. It was fat and strong, and its limbs were slender and powerful. Because of Li Hongyuan's action, it snorted twice and rubbed its head against his arm. Facing this horse that he had raised for several years, Li Hongyuan showed a rare trace of tenderness. I haven't let you run for a long time. Today, I'll let you run to your heart's content. When Eunuch Mu heard this, he knew that his master was going to make trouble again. He'd better let the city defense team get ready early. Li Hongyuan simply turned over and got on the horse. He was extraordinarily handsome, and no one could tell that he was still injured. When he said that he wanted to run, he didn't restrain himself at all. He let the precious horse run wild. As his guard, he naturally had to follow him. Therefore, even if he knew that he would probably go to the prison of the capital government for a few days, he still braced himself and followed him. He should have been aware that he would be stabbed and imprisoned if he followed such a master. Since his master had left, the guard of honor could only return home empty-handed. Speaking of Li Hongyuan's horsemanship, of course, there was nothing to say. In the battlefield for several years in his previous life, he had run on all kinds of roads. Even in the downtown area, he was confident that he wouldn't bump into anyone, not to mention around the imperial palace. He wouldn't see an ordinary civilian for several streets. However, under normal circumstances, although there were few people, once people appeared, they were basically in groups. Even ordinary officials had 3 to 5 servants, not to mention people of similar status as Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan acted as if he did not see Prince Kang's guard of honor coming towards him. Not only did he not order the horse to slow down, he even sped up and rushed straight towards the carriage. The coachman was quite frightened and subconsciously pulled the reins on the left side. The horses pulling the carriage naturally swerved to the left side. In addition, the horses seemed to be frightened. All of a sudden, the carriage swayed and almost flipped over. Li Hongyuan rode his horse and whizzed past the carriage on the right side, while the guards behind him chased with all their might. The dignified guard of honor of Prince Kang was scattered like this, creating chaos. Li Hongyi was hit several times in the carriage, so his anger naturally soared to the sky. When the carriage finally stabilized, he loosened his grip on the wooden plank inside the carriage. Unable to restrain his anger, he got up and abruptly opened the curtain. Who is it? Did they eat a bear's heart and leopard's gall, to dare to hit Ben Wang's carriage? Who is it? He didn't see the main culprit. A bunch of trash. So many people can't keep the other party, what is Ben Wang raising you for? Everyone hurriedly knelt down to beg for forgiveness. Master's anger is, how could Prince Kong wait for them to explain? He jumped down from the carriage and kicked away the person closest to him. Trash, speak, who is it? Replying to Master, it is Jin Qin Wang. Prince Kang's personal attendant didn't dare to have the slightest hesitation. He hurriedly replied with a trembling voice, fearing that if he spoke slowly, he would anger him. But this answer could also explode his master's anger 10 times or 100 times, so he didn't dare to lie. Sure enough, at that moment, Li Hongyi's complexion could be said to be a black bottom pot. Because of the force, the veins on the back of his hand, neck, and even his forehead were throbbing. Li Hongyuan, Li Hongyuan. He squeezed it out from between his teeth. He really wanted to eat his flesh, drink his blood, and chew his bones. Go back and give Ben Wang 50 whips. Go. No matter how angry he was, no matter how much he hated, he couldn't do anything to him. It wasn't that he didn't dare, but that he couldn't. Because if he endured it, this matter might be over. If he fought back, that bastard would be like a mad dog, biting him and not letting him go. The final result would only alarm Fu Huang, and the one who would suffer in the end would never be him, Li Hongyuan. This was what made him most aggrieved. When Prince Kong learned that Lu Qingdi was in the Jade Essence Palace, he went directly to the Empress's Kunyi Palace. The Empress, who was graceful and magnanimous, raised her eyebrows unhappily when she saw Li Hongyi. Her son was sometimes reckless and impulsive, but he wouldn't be so rude. His current appearance, to put it seriously, was disgraceful. What's wrong now? Prince Kang's anger naturally wouldn't subside so quickly. He angrily told the Empress what had just happened. The Empress was silent for a few breaths. Other than that, she didn't have any other reaction. It's not the first time. You've been like this every time. Even if you've angered yourself to death, he still lives freely without any harm. All right, calm down. You're giving Ben Wang a headache. If you encounter this kind of thing in the future, just think of it as being bitten by a dog. If a dog bites you, you can't always think of biting back. Li Hongyi said in his heart, if a dog bites you, it naturally won't bite back. It will directly chop you up. It wasn't easy for his anger to subside, but Li Hongyi didn't dare to disobey his mother, so he could only suppress it. The Empress glanced at him indifferently. It's useless to be calculative now. As long as you can become the final winner, no matter how much humiliation you suffered, you can make up for it 10 times, 100 times over. Let him be proud now. What I want is the final result. In this process, for some things that don't affect the overall situation, even if Li Hongyuan steps on my head and shits on me, I'll endure it. Mother, you're the Empress who is the mother of the world. Why do you have to go to this extent? Do you know why I'm still the Empress even though I'm obviously not favored by your father? Because I can endure it. 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 When the Empress said this, she paused. She seemed to have thought of something and said more. Ding General Manor has great power. The reason why it hasn't fallen to the same situation as Wuanho's mansion is not because the emperors of several generations have been particularly kind to Ding General Manor, but because Ding General Manor is backed by an aristocratic family with a deep background. The entire Sun family is intertwined. It's not easy to uproot it. Ding General Manor has come to this point today. There's no way back. If it retreats, it's not only because your uncle and others are unwilling to give up this great wealth, but also because once it retreats, it will become the next Wuanho's mansion. Although the greater the power, the more your father fears it, only by holding great power can Ding General Manor be protected. Your father won't let me be the only one in power. At the same time, he won't let Su control the imperial harem. In the imperial harem, he also needs balance. This is another reason why I'm sitting on the Empress's throne. The world thinks that I and Su are fighting to the death, like water and fire. It seems that we're evenly matched. It's either the West suppressing the East or the East suppressing the West. We always lose one round and win the other. How can it be so coincidental and regular? There will be times when you're tired of fighting, but for more than 20 years, there's almost no time for rest. Why do you think? Because your father wants us to fight. Don't think that our fighting will make him angry. In fact, the fiercer we fight, the calmer his heart will be. If one day, Empress Mother doesn't want to fight anymore, you'll probably have to enter the cold palace. Prince Kong listened to the Empress's understatement, but he could imagine all kinds of hardships. Li Hongyi's lips squirmed, but in the end, he didn't say anything. There were some things that were useless to say. Empress Mother, what about Li Hongyuan? Why does father indulge him so much? Naturally, it's because of his birth mother, the imperial noble consort from back then. That woman was truly the most beautiful woman in the world. That woman's position in your imperial father's heart is something that all the women in the imperial harem can't compare to. For Su's sure to be able to be the most favored in the imperial harem for so many years, it can't be without the factor of that woman. How did she die? It said that she suffered from dystocia and hemorrhage. It said. This word was so subtle. The Empress nodded noncommittally. If that was the case, then there was most likely a problem. Imperial father's indulgence towards sixth younger brother is simply unrestrained. Then, with the other brothers fighting among themselves, will imperial father directly pass the throne to him in the end? All of us are targets that father set up for him. Thinking of this possibility, Li Hongyi's hostility was even stronger than Li Hongyuan's. Imperial son is thinking too much. An emperor without power and influence, what right does he have to sit on the throne? To be a rare emperor for a day. If father has that idea, he will naturally pave the way for him. Pave the way. How? Kill his other sons and the people behind them. Don't talk about whether your father has that much courage. Even if he really dares to do that, how many people do you think will be left in the end? At the same time, it will inevitably cause chaos. This country will probably. The unfinished words were spoken without finishing. If he can't do it openly, can't he train people in secret? The Empress glanced at her son. For a moment, Li Hongyi's face was burning. Although his mother didn't say anything, her eyes were clearly looking at him as if he was an idiot. It's not that I'm looking down on your father, but your father secretly nurtured a small number of people. It's still possible for him to nurture people who can support the entire court and the entire Qiuan dynasty. The Empress smiled, and there was even some disdain and contempt in her smile. The Empress's smile made Li Hongyi shudder. He knew that his Empress mother was very powerful. He also knew that if it wasn't for his Empress mother's scheming behind the scenes, he wouldn't be Li Hongming's opponent at all. It was very difficult to admit that he was inferior to others. However, Li Hongyi wasn't really arrogant and didn't know his own limits. For example, there were many times when he was like a marionette in his Empress mother's hands. He didn't know if he would be the puppet for the Empress Dowager to govern from behind the curtain when he ascended the throne one day. The Empress acted as if she didn't see Li Hongyi's unpredictable expression. Before you entered the palace, I received news that your sixth brother played a game of chess with your father in the Jade Palace. In the end, your father was defeated miserably when he gave 2 pieces to your father. Li Hongyi suddenly looked up at the Empress in disbelief. He had never won a game of chess with Luqing Emperor. Your sixth brother has never been an idiot. On the contrary, he has been very smart since he was young. He knows how to protect himself best. He knows very well that if he shows off his abilities, he may have died long ago. You should be glad that he seems to be on your third brother's side, but in fact, he doesn't. If he really helped your third brother wholeheartedly, the power in your hands would shrink by at least 1/3. Therefore, my son, you should endure when you need to. Don't force him to side with his opponent. You will only suffer a great loss. Mother, are you saying that Li, sixth brother, is hiding his abilities? He also has ambitions for the throne. My son, do you really want me to say those 2 words? Idiot. Li Hongyi's face was pale from the Empress attack. Perhaps he has ambitions. As a prince, there are not many who would not covet that throne. But perhaps because of the time of birth, there are differences in ambition. Your sixth brother abandoned school when he was young. He didn't learn many things that he should have learned. This is not something that can be made up for with intelligence alone. After so many years, he has long been used to extravagance and debauchery. How likely do you think it is for him to work hard without the help of outsiders? At least until now, he has not become anyone's opponent. You don't need to ask about him for now. Naturally, I will send people to keep an eye on him. You just do what you should do. Son knows. Then, Li Hongyi hesitated as if he had something to say. A man should speak and act decisively. If you have something to say it. Don't hesitate. Back then, was the imperial Gui Fei not of good birth? After so many years, I haven't seen anyone from her maternal family. At least 9 out of 10 people in the world think so. However, it is not true. That woman actually came from the Pei family, the #1 aristocratic family in Jiangnan, and was the legitimate daughter. As everyone knows, the Pei family was loyal to the royal family of the previous dynasty. The Li family seized the country and changed the dynasty. The Pei family was unwilling to be loyal to the new ruler, so they all withdrew from the court and returned to Jiangnan. Because the influence of the Pei family was not small at that time, if the Pei family was destroyed, it was likely that many people who had submitted to the great ancestor would betray him and directly cut off the possibility of the great ancestor ascending the throne. Or perhaps the great ancestor wanted to show his benevolence, so he let the Pei family leave in one piece and issued an imperial edict. Unless the Pei family committed the crime of rebellion, the Li family's emperor could not make things difficult for the Pei family. Because of this, the Pei family naturally would not allow their people to have any relationship with the Li family. For nearly 100 years, there was no room for reconciliation. Furthermore, the Pei family had a family rule that legitimate daughters could not be concubines. The daughter of the Pei family fell in love with your father. At that time, your father was still a prince and just happened to go to Jiangnan on a mission. This matter was very fierce. Your father was almost demoted to a commoner by the previous emperor and had no fate with the throne. In the end, the daughter of the Pei family was eliminated from the Pei family. It was announced that the daughter of the Pei family had suddenly died. The daughter of the Pei family changed her name and followed your father to the capital alone. She hid for 3 years and changed her identity to enter the palace as a concubine. Your father stood his ground against the opinions of the masses and did not hesitate to violate the ancestral teachings to let her enter the palace without power, influence, or background, and be conferred the title of Imperial Gui Fei. Since father cared so much about the daughter of the Pei family, according to common sense, he should have passed the throne to sixth brother. He should have brought sixth brother by his side since childhood and taught him well instead of giving him to Su Gui Fei to raise. If at that time he had paved the way for sixth brother to ascend the throne, with father's full support, I believe many people would be willing to support Li Hongyuan and not the current situation. This son thinks that there must be something else hidden. If the identity of the daughter of the Pei family is a secret of the imperial family, then what you said is a secret of secrets. Imperial Mother also doesn't know. Imperial Mother, should we investigate? It might be of great benefit to us. Imperial Son, if it was possible to investigate, after all these years, Imperial Mother would have already done it. Why would I wait until now? Back then, the imperial noble consort died from blood loss during childbirth. All the palace servants who served her were angered by your father emperor and were all beaten to death to accompany her. Many other people were also implicated and lost their lives. Right now, the only people who still know the truth, other than your father emperor, is probably only Su Shi. Since then, that woman has been a taboo existence to your father. If you don't want to die, don't touch her. What business do you have in the palace? After talking for a long time, the Empress finally asked him about proper business. It was clear that she did not want to continue talking about this matter. After knowing that sixth brother entered the palace, I thought that he most likely wanted to resolve his marriage with cousin. This son wanted to know what the result was. Bengong didn't know that you were so idle, imperial son. Does imperial mother think that this matter is not important? Because of this matter, he was not at ease these few days. Did imperial mother not care at all? Then Bengong asks you, how is this important? Your cousin's disfigurement has become an established fact. Her original value is still there, but after she was bestowed to your sixth brother, she became a completely useless chess piece. It's the same no matter who she marries. Whether your sixth brother compromised or stirred things up to the end, what's the difference? Or is it that if he stirred things up, your cousin can still marry into a good family as your uncle wished and give you another helping hand? Li Hongyi opened his mouth and was speechless. Did sixth brother compromise, or did imperial father compromise? This son can also prepare a congratulatory gift for sixth brother in advance, can't it? Su sure has such a good imperial mother. She has long hoped that her son can have a proper person to take care of him. Although Yi Jia is disfigured, other than that, she is basically impeccable. Even if your sixth brother dislikes her, why can't he let her cover her face and order her around as a servant? She can also take care of Jin Qin Wang Fu and handle the social interactions outside. Li Hongyi understood. With imperial concubine Su, his good sixth brother would compromise. Sixth brother has always been someone who doesn't like good things. His wedding gift is really a bit difficult. Alright, imperial mother will prepare it for you. You don't have to worry. Then, this son thanks imperial mother. Empress Sun waved her hand and let him spend more time on his errands. If there were things he did not understand, he should learn more and ask more. Don't think that he had nothing to do after finishing the matters at hand. Not long after Prince Kong left Kuani Palace, he met Prince Rui, who was also preparing to leave the palace. The two sworn enemies exchanged greetings for a while and showed their brotherly respect for each other. A few days ago, they both wanted to rope in OL for to work together to get rid of the other party. However, they didn't expect that when they thought that they had succeeded and were complacent, they realized that they had been tricked by all four at the same time. Then, just as they left the palace, they both received news that their good sixth brother had rampaged through the city. He whipped several young masters from influential families and destroyed a lot of things. He had his group of bodyguards enter the capital's prison and went to Dingguo Gongfu alone. This was not the end. The main thing was that he went directly to Sun Yijia despite being stopped. Sun Yijia was in her own small courtyard, the inner residence. Chapter 88. Although everyone in Ding General Manor wanted to stay far away from Li Hongyuan, the king of hell, they couldn't. In such a big house, if they didn't stop him or lead the way for him, they didn't know how many people he would offend. After all, there were still many unmarried girls in Ding General Manor. As for Sun Yijia, she had already been betrothed to this king of hell, and she was a disfigured and worthless person. It was human nature to offend her a few times. Therefore, although there was no one in front of Li Hongyuan, a very strange encirclement was formed around him. There were more or less people in three directions looking at him as if they were facing a great enemy. If he walked in the direction where there were no people, their expressions were relatively relaxed. If he walked in the direction where there were people, there would immediately be a few more people in that direction, implicitly telling Li Hongyuan that he couldn't go in this direction. Li Hongyuan sneered and took 2 more steps forward. The faces of these servants became very ugly. Their legs were clearly trembling, but they still refused to move a single step. Their eyes were as wide as copper bells, and they unconsciously put up a defensive posture. It was as if they were looking at death calmly. If Li Hongyuan took another step forward, they would really dare to make a move. What a group of loyal and good servants. Li Hongyuan held the horsewhip in his right hand and gently stroked it in the palm of his left hand. His eyes were dark, and the gloomy atmosphere around him seemed to have turned into a substance, making people couldn't help but tremble with fear. Suddenly, the whip lashed out fiercely. Ah! With a scream, the whip fell precisely on the face of a servant in front of him. The servant covered his face and trembled. In the eyes of outsiders, Li Hongyuan had always been this frightening, but in fact, it wasn't. At least if the people around him were present, they would know that his anger was absolutely not low now. Why do you think? He couldn't go anywhere else, but he could go wherever his Wanwan was. Today, it was him. If it were someone else, wouldn't it be the same? So, in his heart, there was only the person he cared about the most. If it weren't for Jingwan's coincidental appearance, he would have completely forgotten where he was going. He didn't even think about it. If it were someone else, would they be as unruly as he was, barging into someone else's backyard? That was why he was so unreasonable. He treated others with two different sets of rules. When it came to Jingwan, he had to use the best and most beneficial way for her. It was wrong to stop him now, and it was even more wrong to not stop him. Li Hongyuan's anger soared. His attacks were fast, accurate, and ruthless. The group of people screamed in pain from his slaps. Those who still had a bit of courage had all retreated to the back. After all, they couldn't really fight him. How many lives would you have if you dared to fight a prince? Such a thing naturally alarmed old Madame Sunday. She arrived almost at the same time as Duchess Ding. Seeing this chaotic scene and the wanton and insolent Jin Qin Wang, Duchess Ding was so angry that her whole body trembled. Her fingernails almost sank into her flesh. She really wanted to tear him apart. It must be said that old Madame's son, who was used to the wind and waves and didn't get angry easily, was also angry. Originally, she had already handed over the power of the backyard, so she didn't need to come forward. However, she was worried that her daughter-in-law would do something irrational. After all, because of Sister Jia's matter, this daughter-in-law was almost crazy. Who dared to talk about Sister Jia? She even ignored her own identity and immediately turned into an old hen protecting her calf. Old Madame's son didn't expect her to be like this. No matter if she was sincere or hypocritical, or if she had other intentions, the pitiful hearts of parents in the world were pitiful. Even though she knew that what she did was wrong, more than one or two people came to her to complain, and she turned a blind eye. But now, they all knew that they must restrain themselves and force themselves to suppress their anger. The servants were rude and offended Wang Ye, asking for Wang Ye's forgiveness. When old Madame's son opened her mouth, Li Hongyuan finally stopped and turned around. Ben Wang thought that the masters of this Dingguo Fu were all dead. Listening to his words, he really pulled the hatred as soon as he opened his mouth. It wasn't enough to tear him apart alive. I didn't know that Wang Ye had graced us with your presence. Asking for Wang Ye's forgiveness. This prince has always been a magnanimous person. As the saying goes, those who don't know can't be blamed. Next time, this prince will remember to inform your residents first. Next time. You still want there to be a next time? Is this your Jin Qin Wang Fu? You can come and go as you please. Old Madame's son intentionally or unintentionally blocked her daughter-in-law. At that time, we will definitely welcome Wang Ye. Just don't know what Wang Ye has graced us with your presence today. Do you still need Ben Wang to say this question? Then, asking Wang Ye to move to the antechamber. Chinfu will let my granddaughter dress up before going to see Wang Ye, so as not to be disrespectful in front of Wang Ye. You're going to marry Ben Wang. What kind of appearance can't you see? Now is just a meeting in advance. Besides, the servants of your Fu have unanimously pointed out the way for Ben Wang. Ben Wang personally thought that you didn't intend to stop Ben Wang. Anyone who had some respect for their future wife probably wouldn't say such rude words. Hearing this, how could she not know what he meant? Duchess Ding's eyes swept over the servants around as if they were poisoned. Very good. She, the mistress of the family, was still here. She had made it clear before, but these people still dared to humiliate her daughter. It seemed that she was too good-natured. Li Hongyuan used his actions to tell them that he really knew where Sun Yijia lived. Old Madam's son personally stepped forward and blocked Li Hongyuan's path. Wang Ye, Sister Jia has a female guest. Asking Wang Ye to move. Duchess Dingguo anxiously opened her mouth. A female guest. If it were someone else, Li Hongyuan's next sentence would probably be, what does it have to do with Ben Wang whether there is a female guest or not? However, because he knew that it was Jingwan, he naturally wouldn't say this. These people should also know that there is a female guest in your fu. Letting a man break in, Dingguo's mansion really doesn't take other people's girls seriously. These words were hurtful. If it was spread out, which girl would dare to go to the gate of Dingguo's mansion? It was as if their Dingguo's mansion was, like that. Wang Ye, be careful with your words. Old Madam's son's attitude became a little cold. Li Hongyuan smiled indifferently, as if he was watching a joke. Grandmother, mother, there are so many of us here. Even if His Highness went to little sister's small courtyard to see little sister, it wouldn't be too out of line. His Highness is a descendant of the imperial family, so he definitely wouldn't do anything disrespectful. As for the female guest in my sister's courtyard, naturally, there's no reason for Wang Ye to move for an ordinary woman. I can only wrong that girl to move for Wang Ye. Sun Yilin, who was like the moonlight breeze, walked over unhurriedly. His eyes were clear and bright, as if he was untainted by the mud. Li Hongyuan looked at him coldly. He didn't know that Sun Yilin was at home today. Whether it was a coincidence or not, in his eyes, Sun Yilin had evil intentions. If it was because of his previous life, Sun Yilin was a capable minister in his eyes and he looked up to him, then, since Sun Yilin had feelings for Wan Wan, his impression of him immediately fell to the lowest point. Especially when he thought of the same interests and hobbies as Jingwan, Li Hongyuan's expression became a little gloomier. In Li Hongyuan's eyes, there were many people who had the ability to govern the world, but there was only one Jingwan. How could Sun Yilin not feel Li Hongyuan's coldness and hostility towards him? The former was easy to explain, but where did the latter come from? Sun Yilin didn't intend to pursue the matter. After all, even if he asked, there was a 10% chance that he wouldn't get an answer. Old Madam's son seemed to think that Sun Yilin's words were reasonable. She called the servant girl beside her, go and invite the guest from Sister Jia's courtyard to the main courtyard. Li Hongyuan's target was Jingwan, not Sun Yijia. In his eyes, other than his Wan Wan, who else had the charm to take the initiative to come to his door? With Sun Yilin's interference, it seemed that he wouldn't be able to see anyone. If others made him unhappy, he would make them unhappy 10 times more. There's no need. I'm more interested in having a drink with Master Lin now. His wanton eyes were full of malice. Duchess Ding's face changed in an instant. Her attitude towards Sun Yijia had changed a lot. She was willing to protect her daughter strongly, but only if Sun Yilin was not involved. If she had to choose between Sun Yilin and Sun Yijia, she would definitely choose to sacrifice one to protect the other. Your Highness, we've already come to this step. I think Yijia has already dressed up. Why don't you see Yijia? Perhaps your Highness will find that even if Yijia's face is ruined, the flaw can't cover up the jade. Li Hongyuan smiled. It was still a very seductive smile. Do you know what you look like now, madam? A procuress in a brothel who recommends the girls in the brothel to her patron. Duchess Ding was so angry that her face turned blue and she almost fainted. Old Madame Sun's face was not much better. When she looked at Li Hongyuan again, there was a faint unkindness in her eyes. The servants were also extremely embarrassed. They looked at Li Hongyuan as if they were looking at a monster. They had never seen such an arrogant person. "Your Highness, please watch your mouth," Sun Yilin said unhurriedly. No one could tell that he was in a bad mood at all. Li Hongyuan felt that Sun Yilin seemed a little strange just now, but now he finally understood what was wrong. He narrowed his eyes slightly. Sun Yilin now had a trace of the cabinet chief who had experienced great changes in his family, the struggle for the throne, and the ups and downs of the officialdom in his previous life. He was calm, wise, elegant, and often smiled. You could never see anger on his face. Then, he was sold by Li Hongyuan. Maybe he helped Li Hongyuan count the money and was sent to prison. Maybe he was grateful to Li Hongyuan for saving the lives of his family. How old was he at that time? It seemed that he was only in his 30s. At this age, he sat in the position of cabinet chief, but no one in the court said anything. In addition to being afraid of Li Hongyuan's abuse of power, it was also because Sun Yilin's ability and skills were convincing. Although Li Hongyuan didn't remember what state Sun Yilin was in his previous life, he was definitely not so sophisticated. It seemed that some changes had made him change a lot. Not only did he enter the officialdom in advance, but his mentality also matured in advance. Li Hongyuan didn't know whether this was good or bad, but he didn't care. He never expected to be the final winner again with the memory of his previous life. Once things changed, it was bound to cause a series of changes. He had long realized this. He, Li Hongyuan, was indeed arrogant, but he was not arrogant. What? Did I say something wrong? Duchess Ding's attitude explained everything. I just wanted to invite you for a drink, but she hurriedly pushed your sister out. Li Hongyuan sneered softly and coldly. Sun Yilin, no matter how much you care about your sister, what can you do? She is just a chess piece manipulated by others. Even if she wants to marry me, the most unbearable person in your eyes, you can only watch. You can't do anything, not even say a word. Sun Yilin's expression didn't change, but his hands in his sleeves clenched into fists. Then he said with a faint smile, Your Highness is very self-aware. This bit of sarcasm didn't hurt Li Hongyuan at all, and he was indeed very self-aware. He knew what kind of person he was, and he was very clear. In comparison, he preferred to tell the truth. It was really fun to make everyone feel uncomfortable and have nothing to say. He nodded carelessly, I have always been very tolerant. How about this? I will give you a chance to choose. Do you want to drink with me, or do you want me to go and find your sister to pour out my heart? Sun Yilin cupped his hands, this official just happens to have a jar of good aged wine. Your Highness, please do me the honor of drinking with me. Not all people in Duke Ding's mansion are blinded by interests, but Li Hongyuan looked at Sun Yilin and touched his chin with interest. I am looking forward to this marriage. Thinking of all the things about Li Hongyuan, almost everyone's thoughts went astray. The servants couldn't help but feel pity for their young master. At the same time, they felt indignant in their hearts. He wanted to marry their young lady, but he wanted to touch their young master. Such an excellent and perfect young master was going to be defiled by this living king of hell. How could their young master face others in the future? However, if these people noticed the look in Li Hongyuan's eyes, they probably wouldn't think so much. The depths of those deep eyes were cold, without any warmth. Duchess Ding wanted to stop him, but Sun Yilin raised his head as if he had sensed something. He gave her a slightly profound look. Duchess Ding froze, her lips squirmed, but she couldn't say a word. Please, Your Highness. Sun Yilin indifferently reached out his hand and made an inviting gesture. When the two people were far away, Duchess Ding looked at old Madame Sun helplessly. Nyang, are we just going to watch and do nothing? Then what do you want to do? Let people throw Jean Qinhuang out? I thought you could really protect Sister Jia, at all costs. Now that I see it, it's nothing more than this. Since you don't have the courage to resist Jean Qinhuang, then you can only choose to accept it. Lin Gu, chose to sacrifice himself for his younger sister. Regardless of whether others think it's not worth it, and regardless of whether others say he's stupid, as long as he thinks it's worth it, it's enough. After all, he's a man. It's only his reputation that will be damaged, and it won't ruin his future. On the contrary, the emperor may see that he was bullied by Jean Qinhuang and feel guilty, and think more highly of him. Old Madame Sun said coldly. Nyang, how can you say that? At this time, mother-in-law still spoke sarcastically. Wasn't that her most beloved grandson? Duchess Ding was anxious and angry, her eyes red. With the reputation of being a pet molester, how can Yilan marry and have children? Even if his future is not damaged, others will say that he's relying on sex, to get to the top. There are many people who want to cling to Duke Ding's fu. Why can't he marry and have children? If his future is not damaged and there are benefits, isn't that enough? Don't you put benefits first? For benefits, you can sell your sons and daughters. The current situation may be to our Duke's satisfaction, especially your eldest son. He may be so happy that he's about to celebrate. And you, ask yourself honestly, are you protecting Sister Jia, or yourself? Nyang, it's not like this. It seemed that some secret had been exposed. Duchess Ding was angry and wanted to explain. If it weren't for your greed, would it have become like this today? If it's really for Sister Jia's sake, as long as you give enough sincerity, I believe that the emperor will take back the order. Even if you yourself take out the thing at the bottom of the chest, this marriage can also be dissolved. But you never thought that way. Duchess Ding looked at old Madame Sun in disbelief. Nyang, how do you know that? Duchess Ding sneered. How would this old woman know about that thing? If you don't do anything, don't stop Brother Lin from doing something for his sister. After that, she turned around and left without the help of the maid. Obviously, she was not interested in answering Duchess Ding's question. Sun Yilan's courtyard was very large, and there were all kinds of precious flowers and trees in sight. However, because they were placed and taken care of properly, there were not too many good things put together. Instead, it felt cumbersome. On the contrary, there was a dazzling scenery at every step. Li Hongyuan casually plucked a flower. The tiny thorns on the branch pricked his finger. He casually threw the flower away. Raising his hand, a dark red bead of blood appeared on his fingertip. With a swipe of his thumb, the blood bead was wiped away. Sun Yilan stood to the side in silence. Li Hongyuan walked and picked flowers as he walked. He did the same thing as before in the imperial palace, destroying flowers ruthlessly. After walking around, Li Hongyuan did not see the 4 famous peonies collected by Sun Yilan. Then, he saw the greenhouse in the courtyard. It's hidden quite well. He looked back at Sun Yilan. Why, you don't want to let Ben Wang take a look? Sun Yilan naturally knew what he meant. It hasn't bloomed yet. Presumably, Wang Ye is also not interested. It doesn't matter if it hasn't bloomed yet. Ben Wang can also let people move it back and slowly wait for it to bloom. Wang Ye is joking. You think Ben Wang is joking? Seeing that Sun Yilan's face finally changed slightly, Li Hongyuan unhurriedly opened his mouth. You are indeed joking. However, it's good to raise your pots of peonies. If Ben Wang knows that you gave them away, don't blame Ben Wang for using them as firewood. Sun Yilan was quite surprised. This was not like Jean Qinhuang's style. What did he mean by insisting that he keep them in his hands? Would Li Hongyuan tell him that he couldn't bear to see him use flowers and trees to hook up with his future wife? Other than giving a stalk of Wei Zi to Jingwan, Sun Yilin didn't see him give it to anyone else. Naturally, to prevent this kind of thing from happening again, the best way was to cut the weeds and pull out the roots, burning them all. Unfortunately, his wife already knew that these flowers were destroyed by him. After they got married, it was inevitable that she would settle accounts with him. Even if his romantic affair was fake after all, it could still be used as fun to settle accounts. But according to how much Jingwan cared about flowers and trees, even if they weren't her own and he destroyed them, she would still be really angry. As for borrowing a knife to cut flowers, other than him doing it himself, in the entire capital, even if other people dared, they wouldn't do it. As for those who didn't dare to do it, there was no need to talk about it. Li Hongyuan picked another flower and then hooked the corner of his mouth. He reached out and put the flower hairpin above Sun Yilin's ear. His action, in the eyes of the servants not far away, was simply indescribably charming and flirtatious. Li Hongyuan was the most handsome man in the entire capital and even the entire Qiyuan. There was no need to talk about the degree of handsomeness, and Sun Yilin's appearance was absolutely not bad. At the age of 17, he was still a young man who hadn't completely grown up. With a flower hairpin, it added a bit of beauty to him. Sun Yilin was half a head shorter than Li Hongyuan. When the two people stood together, it inexplicably made people feel that they were a match. This was Jingwan's first impression when she saw the two standing together. Then her eyes were covered by a hand that stretched out from the side. Jin Qin Wang, fifth brother. Sun Yijia's face was covered with a veil, her expression somewhat stiff as she opened her mouth. When the two heard this, they turned their heads at the same time, and then their complexions turned bad. Li Hongyuan's purpose was only because he was bored and did it for those who were afraid that he would do something to Sun Yilin. But it seemed that he overreached himself. How could it be seen by Wan? What if it was misunderstood? Although what one sees may not be the truth, but many times, misunderstandings were caused like this. Being caught in the act, even for someone as thick-skinned as him, he also felt somewhat embarrassed and guilty, okay? The problem was that he still couldn't explain. Compared to Li Hongyuan, Sun Yilin wasn't much better. No matter what purpose Jin Qin Wang had for doing that kind of thing, he was able to deal with it as usual. Besides, although Jin Qin Wang was smiling, but in reality, he was a bit playful, a bit bored, and there wasn't the slightest bit of ambiguity. So much so that his fingers didn't even touch his own hair. However, when it was seen by the girl he admired, it was completely different. After all, he wasn't that shameless Li Hongyuan. In this aspect, he was more like a blank sheet of paper, so his face couldn't help but turn red. Jingwan just happened to pull Sun Yijia's hand down and saw Sun Yilin's red face. Could it be that this famous Lin Gongzi wasn't actually coerced, but was actually in love with Jin Qin Wang? It was only because of their reputation that they didn't openly walk together. Li Hongyuan saw Jingwan's slightly flashing gaze and knew that she had misunderstood. He couldn't help but have a somewhat dark expression. Then, in Jingwan's view, it was because he was displeased because his good thing was disturbed. If the two people knew Jingwan's thoughts, they would have the heart to die. Li Hongyuan shot a glance at Sun Yilin. Sure enough, he thought too much. What steady, wise, and refined cabinet grand secretary, this face was too lacking. Even if he really did something wrong, he still had to be confident and self-confident, his face not red and his heart not skipping a beat. Chapter 89. Sister Jia, why don't we leave first? Jingwan felt that if she continued to watch, she would feel awkward. Sun Yijia was also very tangled. Although she had not experienced the baptism of adult education, she did not think as much as Jingwan and did not misunderstand the relationship between the two. However, the two of them did not seem to get along as badly as she imagined. Her worries seemed to be superfluous, but for her to turn around and leave like this, she was also not at ease. Jingwan's voice brought Sun Yilan back to his senses. Why did you come over? Sun Yijia naturally would not tell him directly that it was because she heard that her own brother had obstructed Jin Qinhuang for her and he himself was put in a difficult position. For a moment, he accidentally smashed something. His heart was perturbed and he could not sit still. It was Jingwan who suggested coming over to take a look. She was originally worried that it would be rude to leave Sister Wan behind, but she did not think that Sister Wan would also come over. In fact, Sun Yijia did not approve of Jingwan following along. She was worried that because she was not liked by Jin Qinhuang would vent his anger on Jingwan and do something rude to her. If it was not good, it might even ruin her reputation. However, Jingwan insisted, so she could not do anything. If it was said that Jingwan did not consider this, naturally it was not. When facing people who were not stingy, one naturally had to be on guard. After all, in this world, if a woman was too harsh, the consequences of ruining her reputation would be too serious, especially when it was related to innocence. Jingwan dared to come over, naturally she had something to rely on. After all, she was Jin Qinhuang's savior. She would not force him to repay the favor. For Jin Qinhuang to let her off was already a great kindness. However, the real reason was that she felt that Jin Qinhuang was not as unbearable as the rumors said. In addition to what she saw and understood about Jin Qinhuang, there was also a feeling. That feeling was inexplicably strong, so strong that it made her desperate to take risks. Because when I was at Bailong Temple, I made a flower arrangement. Sister Jia said that the flowers in young Master Sun's courtyard were the best and wanted to cut a few to make vases. Jingwan lied without changing her expression. Because it was not completely false, she was not guilty at all. It was just that she was originally going to pick flowers in the garden. So it was like that. What do you need? I can cut it for you. If he just let them go like this, perhaps this misunderstanding would become real. It would be best to clarify it now. As for Jin Qinhuang, what the hell was that? Even if the emperor came up, he would have to stand aside. As for whether or not Jingwan would be fancied by a certain person, with his protection, he could not let her suffer losses. Jingwan smiled faintly and nodded. The strange atmosphere had already disappeared. If she asked to leave for no reason, it would be too deliberate. But now that she thought about it carefully, she seemed to have thought too much just now. Although this man gave another man a hairpin, if it was not a special situation, who would do that? However, there was still a kind of person in the world who was extremely poor and extremely vile. It seemed that Jin Qinhuang was such a person, at least on the surface. If this matter was done by Sun Yilan, then Jingwan would not think about anything and would directly nail him on the road of being a homosexual. Therefore, it was not that this person with a terrible reputation did not have any advantages, but there were more disadvantages. For example, in the future, if he affectionately expressed his deep love to his true love, not only would the other person not be moved, but would instead give you a suspicious face. That would make you want to vomit blood and bang your head against the wall. This was the true portrayal of the incomparably honorable Jin Qinhuang. Then, he would find that capturing his wife's heart was even more difficult than chasing after his wife. He could devise strategies and control the world, but it was difficult to win the heart of his little wife. His heart was tired. Li Hongyuan's purpose was originally Jingwan. Being able to see her was naturally an unexpected surprise. Only a fool would open his mouth to let them leave. He actually wanted to let the two people who were really eyesores leave, but unfortunately, he could not. However, in the future, when doing bad things, he still had to bring someone to keep watch. The servant girl quickly brought the scissors. Sun Yilan was about to take it when a hand came and snatched the scissors away. What do you want, Ben Wang will do it. Sun Yilin immediately restrained his smile. Even if the other party was a Wang Yi, he still wanted to violently beat him up. When he was courting the woman he admired and someone was making trouble, it was really not the ordinary kind of infuriating. Regarding Sun Yilin's thoughts, Li Hongyuan was very clear. It would be strange if he did not do something. Li Hongyuan carelessly tossed the scissors in his hand, as if he was not waiting for their reaction for a long time. He slightly tilted his head and lightly raised his eyebrows. His face was practically saying, "What do you want?" still not saying it. Jingwan did not know why, but she kept feeling that his line of sight fell on her body. Jin Wang Ye's long face was really not an ordinary one. From the side, there were no blind spots. Those long eyelashes were absolutely natural. Occasionally, when he blinked, it was like a small brush gently brushing against the heart. In addition, there was always some kind of flirtatious feeling that appeared on a big man's body. Jingwan had never felt that she would be bewitched by beauty, but at this time, there was also a tendency for her face to turn red and her heart to beat faster. She slightly lowered her head and restrained her gaze. It was no wonder that this man had such a bad reputation, yet there were still women throwing themselves at him. If they threw themselves at him, they would not have to sacrifice themselves for the rest of their lives. If they ate him and did not need to take responsibility, she also wanted to throw herself at him. She also wanted to nibble him clean from the inside out. Well, this was purely because she was bored. Seeing a super handsome man, she could not help but fantasize. Because Jingwan had shifted her gaze away, she did not see Li Hongyuan's faintly discernible smile. He had always known the charm of this face of his, but he did not pay much attention to it before. It was just that he did not expect that it would have some effect on Wan. Could it be that he finally found a use for this face? Because the time that the two people exchanged amorous glances was extremely short, Sun Yilin and Sun Yijia did not notice it. They did not know if it was an illusion or not, but Jin Wang Ye's mood seemed to be very good. Seeing that Li Hongyuan was about to use the scissors to destroy the flowers, Sun Yilin did not want to let his treasures be ruined, so, "Miss Luo, what flowers do you need?" Then he turned his head to look at Li Hongyuan. That bit of gentleness was completely restrained. For Wang Ye to condescend, it is also the fortune of these flowers. However, Sun Yilin did not count on him. In his view, in the end, he would still have to do it himself. He only hoped that his flowers would not be ruined by him. In fact, there is no need to deliberately cut a particular kind of flower. A single kind of flower has a single kind of insertion method, and many kinds of flowers have many kinds of insertion methods. There is no unified conclusion. Li Hongyuan nodded slightly. His eyes swept over the flowers, and then he started. In his previous life, he only knew that Wan raised flowers, loved and cherished flowers. But when he met her, she already did not have the time, did not have the conditions, and did not have the heart to take care of those flowers and plants. It was only by chance that he saw her make a flower basket out of wild flowers. It was clearly the most unremarkable thing, but in her hands, it was able to show the effect of attracting the attention of the world. At that time, from her body, he saw longing, a tenderness that had disappeared for a long time, and a trace of the most pure smile. Originally, he thought that Li Hongyuan was an expert in ruining flowers, but after he cut a few times, not only Sun Yilin, even Jingwan revealed a surprised expression. This Wang Ye's understanding of all kinds of flowers and plants seemed to be beyond their expectations. Whether it was the flower branches that he chose, or the method of cutting, it could basically be used to make a flower arrangement. It only needed to be trimmed the leaves and the like. Compared to the usual Li Hongyuan, in the midst of hundreds of flowers, he was calm and tranquil. That scene was really pleasing to the eye, and it did not contain any other emotions. If one did not pay attention to his face, even if it was the people who knew him best, they would not be able to recognize him at first glance. It was as if he was a completely different person. Sun Yilin half narrowed his eyes. There was no longer the previous gentleness, and it was dyed with sharpness. Raising flowers and plants could cultivate the mind and nurture one's nature. In the end, the current Jin Wangye was also privately raising flowers and plants, and being in the middle of a sea of flowers, he naturally calmed down. Or was the Jin Wangye that they knew was not the same person as him? Gong Mama, who was standing with the servants of Duke Ding Fu not far away, had a completely different feeling from everyone else. The current Jin Wangye made her see the feeling when her own miss was tending to the flowers and plants. She had not been by Li Hongyuan's side for long. Although she knew that he let people raise a lot of flowers for miss, she had never seen him do it himself. Just like many other things, she had never learned him, but he was knowing without learning. He was interested in the country, but he seemed to value miss more than the country. In history, there were many monarchs who loved beauties, but there was no monarch who loved beauties more than the country. If one could only choose one, the one that was abandoned was often the beauty. Not only that, the beauty was often scolded as a femme fatale, an evildoer who brought disaster to the country. The more miserable their end, the better. Before Gong Mama left the capital for Qianfu, she had asked Li Hongyuan a similar question because she did not think that the other princes had the ability to compete with him for the throne. How did he answer? If they can't even protect their own woman, then they are incompetent. Ben Wang will raise her to the highest position and let the world know that with her, the country is stable and the world is peaceful. Without her, the country will sway and the people will be in a terrible situation. With her, the monarch will listen to honest advice and accept hundreds of words. Without her, he will be obstinate and self-opinionated and dictate the court. Of course, these were not Li Hongyuan's original words, but according to Gong Mama's understanding, it was like this. At that time, because she had not seen Jingwan, her heart was complicated and difficult to speak. This clearly wanted to push Miss Luo to the position of national treasure, then no one would dare to touch her. She was originally worried that if Miss Luo was really a demoness who could bring disaster to the country, then when the Qi Yuan dynasty changed to a new emperor, it would be the end of the country. Fortunately, her new master was much better than she had expected, so it did not take long for her to completely lean towards her young lady. Moreover, after more than 2 years, she was very clear that if Miss Luo was really raised to such a high position by the prince, she had the ability to protect the country. It was not only because she could influence the prince to the greatest extent, but also because she herself had that kind of potential. While Gong Mama was distracted, Li Hongyuan came back with a basket full of flowers. His movements were calm and unhurried, and his posture was straight. Even though he was doing something that did not match his status, it did not damage his noble aura at all. Instead, it reduced the coldness and alienation that came from his princely robes, making him seem so high and mighty that he could be easily broken with a stretch of his hand, tempting people to approach him. Wherever this man went, the heavens and the earth would dim in comparison. Jingwan almost subconsciously stroked the prayer beads on her wrist. The feeling of a monarch overlooking the world appeared again. Every step he took, it was as if he deliberately stepped on her heart. And this time, not only Jingwan, Sun Yilin, who was close by, also felt it. Because he often saw Lu Qingdi, he was very clear about what it meant to be unpredictable. If it was a guess before, then now, Sun Yilin was 100% sure that all of them had been deceived by Jin Qinhuang. He hid it so deeply, if he said that he did not have any ulterior motives, even ghosts would not believe it. However, he had clearly been hiding it well, so why did he suddenly find out? Perhaps he agreed to this marriage because he wanted to win over Duke Dingguofu, or was it because he wanted to be used by Li Hongyuan? He originally did not approve of this marriage, and after Li Hongyuan was exposed, he disapproved even more. Not to mention whether his terrible reputation before was true or false. Even if it was false, this man's mind was too deep, too terrifying. It was not something that could be influenced by anyone. And in Sun Yilan's view, those were most likely true, because it had no effect on him at all. So, why should he wrong himself? Moreover, only by making the play real could he deceive everyone. Therefore, no matter what, if his younger sister married him, she would definitely not have a good life. Seeing Sun Yilan's fluctuating expression, he could roughly guess what he was thinking. Li Hongyuan coldly snorted in his heart. He did not need Duke Dingguofu at all. What he needed was the Sun clan behind it. Not to win them over, but to destroy them, to split them up. Moreover, it was really embarrassing, but he had already started. Even if the masters of Duke Dingguofu found out now, it could not be salvaged. The only person present who knew Li Hongyuan's purpose was probably only the serious-looking Gong Mama, because she really did not know what to say. And if Jingwan knew that all his purpose was just for her to see, all his performance was just because a male peacock flaunted its feathers to seek a mate, she did not know whether she should be proud of herself for being able to subdue such a man, or remain silent and then slap this man away. When Jingwan took the basket handed over by Li Hongyuan, to be honest, she was still a little out of sorts. But the deep education in her bones still made her salute without any hesitation. "Thank you, Your Highness." Her attitude was calm, neither servile nor overbearing. Li Hongyuan smiled gently. This was his Wan. She did not have a peerless appearance, a strong background, or various talents, but she was gentle, considerate, generous, open-minded, unyielding, grateful, and never complained. She was kind, but also had a clear distinction between love and hate. If she liked someone, she liked him. If she didn't like him, she didn't like him. She was not pretentious. How many people didn't like and cherish her? "Your Highness, can you not laugh?" It was too illegal. She had to admit that Jingwan felt that she seemed to have been inadvertently flirted with by this man again. But it really was inadvertent. "Jingwan, you're too naive." Seeing the harmonious atmosphere between the two, Sun Yilan suddenly felt a strong sense of danger. For a while, he did not think of Li Hongyuan's true goal. He was worried that Li Hongyuan had become interested in Jingwan. In the eyes of some people, Jingwan did not meet the standard of beauty in Li Hongyuan's eyes, but Sun Yilan did not think so. The face was not the only standard to judge a person's beauty. If one had a good appearance, but did not have the bearing to support that appearance, it was all in vain. Sun Yilan subconsciously wanted to separate the two of them, but Li Hongyuan seemed to have eyes on the back of his head. He took a step to the side and turned to walk away. The charming atmosphere instantly disappeared and everything seemed like an illusion. "Sun Yilan, didn't you want to treat this king to wine? Where is the wine? Take advantage of this king's good mood." "So everything you did just now was because you were in a good mood?" Sun Yilan hoped that it was only like this. Sun Yilan wanted nothing more than to quickly separate them as far as possible. "Your Highness, please." Li Hongyuan looked at Sun Yilan with a smile that was not a smile. There seemed to be a deeper meaning in his eyes. Jingwan did not see this expression of his, but it fell into Sun Yilan's eyes. His heart skipped a beat. Anything could happen when one was drunk. The servant girls took the wine and prepared the dishes. Without needing Sun Yilan's orders, they all moved to a small pavilion in the courtyard. "Older sister Jia, let's go." It seemed that there was nothing wrong and the excuse had been achieved. There was no need to continue staying here. "Younger sister Wan, there's no rush. Didn't I say before that I wanted to learn how to cultivate flowers from fifth brother? He's not a qualified teacher. How about you tell me again now? You don't have to tell me too much. Just tell me about the habits of the flowers in fifth brother's courtyard." Sun Yijia held Jingwan's hand. Jingwan saw that her line of sight always seemed to glance at Li Hongyuan and Sun Yilin. How could she not understand her intentions? Jingwan readily agreed. From the moment they entered, Jingwan discovered that there were many varieties of flowers and trees in Sun Yilin's courtyard. Moreover, it could be seen that they were all carefully cultivated and taken care of very carefully. Even if Sun Yijia's purpose was not here, Jingwan was not perfunctory. No matter what kind of flowers or trees she introduced, she was very careful and attentive. She used words that Sun Yijia could understand as much as possible. It was concise and comprehensive. Even if Sun Yijia was distracted at the beginning, she was gradually attracted over. From time to time, she would ask 1 or 2 questions. Jingwan told her everything that she knew. Moreover, these questions were not difficult for her at all. In the pavilion over there, the moment Sun Yilin saw the truth, he knew that his skills were not enough in Jin Qinwang's eyes. What is Wang Ye's intention? Li Hongyuan held the cup and took a small sip. He carefully tasted the taste. It's not bad. He raised his head and drained it in one gulp. Wang Ye is quite assured of this official. Are you not worried that this official will tamper with the wine? Li Hongyuan faintly glanced at him. Are you that stupid? In the past, I naturally would not. But now it's different. Wang Ye's threat is too big. Paying a little price to get rid of future troubles, why not? Pay a little price. Sun Yilin, in your opinion, how big is this price? Then Ben Wang will tell you. Dingguo Gong Fu, Sun Clan, the Empress, Li Hongyi, and all the officials who support him, 9 generations will be exterminated. Li Hongyuan smiled and downplayed the bloody matter. Sun Yilin's face was cold as he stared fixedly at Li Hongyuan. https:///11/11807/6652972